Now, writing is something that most people dread. They don't like doing it. And it makes sense. It's the last part of any language acquisition. If you think about the language, your native language or your mother tongue, writing is probably the last thing you learn, and it's probably the weakest out of all the 4 skills. And it's no different here. Unfortunately, this is where most students drop the ball. They're not able to acquire the mark they need, so it's probably where you need the most focus. This part of the exam is where students score the lowest marks. Now, when you do the writing part of the exam, they're going to give you 2 parts at the same time. They'll give you writing task 1 and task 2, and you'll have 1 hour to complete both. So here, you should spend 20 minutes. Just keep in mind, it is your job to allocate the time correctly. So it is not like they give you writing task 1 and then they take away the paper at 20 minutes. What ends up happening many times is test candidates may spend far too much time on writing task 1, and they don't look at the clock and they forget about it. They spend 25 minutes or 30 minutes, and then they do not have enough time for writing task 2. So make sure you allocate your time correctly. I would only spend about 20 minutes on this. If you're going over, you generally will not finish task 2. Now, if you're taking the general exam, you'll be writing a letter, very similar to what they asked you to do in part A of writing for the HKDC. But if you're taking the academic exam, they're going to ask you to write a report, usually about a table or chart. It could be a diagram, a process. It could be a map. Make sure to write at least 150 words, though I do recommend that you write about 170 to 200. Lots of students try to count how many words they have, and that takes 2 minutes to count. It would just be better for you to write an extra sentence or 2 in that time to expand your word count. Lastly, your writing task 1 is worth 1/3 of your mark. Writing task 2 is worth 2/3 of your mark. Let's talk about the marking scheme. And this is lots of words for important. You can look this up. It's very imperative or pivotal, critical, crucial for you to understand how you're going to score well on the writing portion of the exam. Now, there are a few things that you can do. First off, you can access this marking scheme online. You just go onto the internet and type IELTS writing task 1. You can type marking scheme or band descriptors, and you'll see this. So this is public information, nothing secret here. You'll notice there are 4 different components. We have task achievements, which simply means, did you do what they asked you to do? And I'll explain that a bit more afterwards. We have coherence and cohesion. How did you organize your writing? Is it easy to understand? Does it flow into the other parts? Lexical resource is just a fancy way of saying vocabulary. So it might sound scary. What is lexical? It just means, is your vocabulary good? Lastly is grammatical range and accuracy. Now, there's many things that comprise grammatical range and accuracy. The main thing would be tenses and spelling and punctuation. Tenses would probably be the major factor in writing task 1. Here are some of the question types that you'll see in writing task 1. So there's lots of different varieties that can be good and can be bad. What I can say is this, though. A lot of the skills that you learn are transferable to all parts. So the most common ones would be something like this, like a pie chart. And you'll notice here as an example, we have 2 different pie charts, and it says 1981, 1991. So I want to ask you, a lot of you are quite smart. What tenses do you think you'd be using for a question That's in 1981 and 1991. So you can let me know in the chat room. What kind of tenses do you think you'd primarily use? Past tense, past tense. Yes, past tense. Okay. There's, yes, lots of past, past, past. Wow, 15 past. Okay, can you be more specific? Which past tense? Let's see the difference. Okay, simple past. Okay, yeah, simple past, good. Is there another past tense you might use? Past perfect. Thank you, whoever that dot person is, Kelvin and all these other people. Excellent. So the two primary tenses, you guys are so smart, you don't even need me. You need to write past simple tense and past perfect tense. If you only write in past simple tense, it's okay. But when you're doing the comparison, you will not get maximum marks for grammar. So if you're right and you put in past simple tense and past perfect tense, then you can score maximum marks. So excellent. I'm very happy to see that. Very happy to see that. So good job. All right, very good. Let's look at this bar chart on the top right. Let me ask you this. It doesn't give you a time. What tense do you think you would write this in? Maybe, there we go, Mavis. First one, simple present tense, right? Because it doesn't tell you any time. It's a routine or habit or fact. So you have to use it in present simple tense. So if you write it in any other tense, it is wrong. Very good. Wow, so smart. I'm going to be out of a job soon. All right. Now, if you take a look at the bottom right, this is a map. Maps, generally, test candidates or students are very fearful of them. They are extremely rare. They happen less than 5% of the time. So if you get a map, you are unlucky. That means you're being punished for some reason. You did something bad, and now you have to do a map. However, if you get a map, it's exactly the same strategy as anything else. Notice we have three different tenses, 1900, 1950, and the year 2000. So you'd still have to write it in past simple tense and past perfect tense. So it's the same strategies. The language is slightly different. So instead of saying increase and decrease all the time, like with numbers, you might use words like expand or it got wider or more narrow, something like that. So that language, there's certain language that is very specific to maps or sizes that cannot be applied to numbers. So that's where it gets a little bit more challenging, but the principles are still the same. So don't panic and say, oh, it's completely different, I'm going to score poorly. It's not like that. You just have to use a little bit different vocabulary. What we have in the top part is we have a process. If it's a process, there's a few things, or actually quite a few things you need to do. You have to use passive voice. You have to use participle clauses. There's a lot of things that I could talk about. It would take a whole hour to really get down to it, but just understand that processes are a little bit different than if it's a table or chart. Make sure that you always have an overview, which is just a summary. If you miss the overview, you will score 5 or less for your task achievement. It even says that in the marking scheme. Presents a clear overview. If you don't do that, no clear overview, that's a score of 5. The other thing you must make sure you do, if it has something to do with numbers, is you must present data. If you have no data, you will also score 5 or less for task achievement. So those are the two largest errors students or test candidates make when writing the academic task 1 portion.